Welcome back to the Vapes4Vets podcast. Today, very special treat. There were four of us. I was joined by Tim and Nick. Both these guys, they started Glass House. They're veterans. They're amazing guys. They train service dogs. It's an amazing podcast and gets emotional at times, but because these guys have an amazing story. And also had Robbie on. Robbie and I are going to be starting a podcast called Vaporize the Pain. Stay tuned for that. And yeah, enjoy the episode, and as always, stay tuned for new episodes. This is a very special episode. We're joined by Tim and Nick with Robbie in the background. How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing excellent. This is Nick. Doing awesome.
Thanks for
Hey,
coming
this
on.
is Tim, everybody. Doing equally as well. Absolutely glad to be here, man.
Well, I'm glad you guys came on. We got four people on the podcast today, so we're gonna have a lot of fun and keep it organized. Start off with Tim. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Yeah. So basically, I came to the point where I'm at right now by joining the military. My dad was in the Air Force growing up, and I always had a desire to be patriotic and to serve my country. And I saw an opportunity to do that by joining the infantry in the Army, and that's what I did. Went through training and deployed, and it wasn't all it was really struck up to be or cut up to be. I ended up getting sort of having the epiphany that they kind of shoot back the enemy. It's kind of different than training, and I ended up getting hurt and medevaced out in '09, and ended up coming back to Omaha and never really treating any of my PTSD symptoms, and any of the TBI issues I had were just really going untreated, and if they were getting treated, it was through pharmaceuticals. And so the moment, the apex was sort of where I had woken up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, and my wife found me several hours later on the bathroom floor, and I was unconscious. I passed out due to a bad drug interaction. And it was at that point where my hippie of a wife was like, you know what, we've got to try something else. We've got to do something different. And so we began Googling, and one of the places that we ended up was cannabis. It was unequivocal from the veterans that I had spoken with before even trying it as a treatment for PTSD, that it was a life changer, that it was a game changer for them. And so it was a no-brainer. I took some time and made some connections with some great guys like Matt Kale with Veterans for Natural Rights, Steve DeFino with Veteran Farmer Alliance. These guys became the connections that helped me get access to cannabis in Colorado legally. And for the first time, I was able to find relief from these symptoms. And it even causes me to want to cry thinking about the first time that I was able to use it, and how great it was to be able to come home and talk with some of my veteran friends who have been using it in the closet for so long, and be able to find that camaraderie and say, hey, while it may be difficult for you to do this alone, know now that you're not alone. And one of those homies that I was able to connect with and able to spend a lot of time in Colorado with doing it legally was Nick Evans. And through that relationship, we were able to form this sort of alliance or sort of an understanding, more than just we're homies who get together sometimes. It was like we have a mission. Like it became clear, like we have something to do, and we began to read reports of suicide after suicide after suicide, all in relationship to the pills that I had just given up, and that Nicholas equally hated. And so we said we got to do something, and we started talking about a house, and we started talking about like how the veteran is similar to like an old farmhouse where the wood is decrepit and the windows are broken and the doors don't work and you don't know what's living under the boards and you might get tetanus and it's gross. And what we come to the epiphany is we need to do something. We need to clean the house. We need to do some house cleaning. And it was like we need to kind of be see-through and Nick's like glass, and it was like a glass house, and it was boom. It was like, and the process of how we grew to that point is something I'm going to let Nick go over because he's got a better memory about that stuff. But that's sort of my building up from sort of being a semi-straight edge, not into what I would consider to be illicit drug, to now somebody who would very easily call myself an advocate for the medicinal usage of not just cannabis, but a variety of different, what I feel to be medicinal plant medicines. Entheogenics are something that I also am a big advocate for, and believe that as a nation we should move past the stigmas and ideologies and get into the facts and allow the research to happen so that these people who are going through atrocities can experience some relief, if possible. So that's my story. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna let Nicholas talk, or let you guys ask any questions that you've got.
Yeah, well, we'll hear from Nick, and then I got a couple of questions for you, Tim, but let's get Nick involved.
Yeah. So basically, my name's Nick. I'm 27 years old. I served in the Army for 6 years, from 2009 to 2011. I graduated high school in 2008. I kind of joined already a messed up individual. A lot of familiar problems, a lot of problems in high school, crime and drug addiction and alcoholism at a young age. So I really had no ambition or goal going anywhere out of high school, and I took a year off like a fool, like anybody else would, and ended up just going to last resort, like, maybe the military is like the way to go. I had that mentality of like, I hate the world, and I've always wanted to join the military ever since a kid. I remember just like always having a dream, and finally thinking about it, like I was like, yeah, I'm finally fulfilling that dream, and so in 2009 I joined and went through training. I ended up doing 2 years active, 4 years National Guard, but the first 2 years were the most critical times. I got out of training and came back and got orders basically within 5 months of being back from training, that we were being attached to 3rd Group Special Forces, if you guys aren't familiar with, out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So we were being attached to a unit that was going to be very involved. And when we deployed, I didn't really have, I had an MOS, obviously. It was a chemical equipment repair, which translates over to appliance electrician, basically. But they wanted to cross-train me to be a mechanic and do all these other things. So I went to AM General School before I deployed and got all kinds of training in mechanics and stuff like that with the Humvees, and got to drive them on the course, the WIC course. It was fun. It was awesome. And by the time I deployed, I landed in theater February 1st, 2011. And we had just gotten done with a whole month training in Fort Bragg with the unit that we were attached to. And by the time we landed, I had probably 2 weeks of unemployment, just based on, you guys know how it is. Civilian contractors, the DOD civilians, the other countries that have civilians contract out, they all take over some of those ordnance jobs, maintenance jobs, cleaning jobs, and those sorts. So I was basically handed over to, even though we were attached to 3rd Group, I was handed over to the command to find a job, basically. And so they found me a job, and I worked as a parachute rigger aerial delivery specialist. And for an entire year, we were in charge of 107 different drop zones and outposts throughout Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. We were also in charge of 14 Afghan local nationals. We managed them day in and day out. We were on every kind of aircraft, and anything that flew out of Bagram Air Base, we were in and out of, and loading in and out of. And so throughout that time, a lot of work. We were doing resupplies. We were doing supplies in the middle of the night. We were just doing everything, just going at it hardcore. And we saw a whole different side of combat. We were busting missions out to different drop zones all the time. And about 6 months in, after I'd come back on leave, I kind of had a panic attack, split apart from my family. I didn't come back home for leave, and told my family, like, last minute, hey, I'm not coming home. I had a panic attack when I dropped in Dallas. They didn't even know I had a panic attack until just this, recently. And so when I came home, I moved out to California. I basically ran away from everything, except I moved into an area that was just like Afghanistan. It was in Palmdale, Lancaster area. It was terrible. And I spent time out there just shuddering, on the 4th of July, just dropping and curling up in the floor and doing all kinds of crazy things. And then I started growing medicinal cannabis. And I started growing it for myself. And at that time, California started getting really hard on me. So I decided to move back to Nebraska By the time 2013 came around, I was back here. And living in Nebraska, I've tried to get jobs, tried to do all the things that I can do, and I've had an overwhelming effect of delayed PTSD where everything about 8, maybe 9 months ago, things just started dropping. Things just started falling apart. Things just started happening that I couldn't explain. And for 5 years, for 4.5 years, I was not only afraid of the VA, but I was angry at the VA, and I didn't want to go. And because of the addictions I had and growing up, I didn't want any of the pharmaceuticals. Growing up, I didn't, have a whole lot of family structure, so there wasn't a whole lot of therapy that I had. So I didn't want people finding out things that was wrong with me. I didn't want people telling me that there was something wrong with me, and I was afraid of those conclusions of maybe there's something wrong with me, and my military service perpetuated a lot of those things. So fast forward to now, I'm dealing with a whole lot. I've been in and out of the VA. I've had mental breakdowns. I've had, I admitted myself. Tim took me to the hospital after a breakdown, and we had to do a buddy check moment, and I had to go and get admitted in for 3.5 days. And it's just been an overall struggle. So for like the last 3 years, I've been using medicinal cannabis and hadn't known, the effects of it. And fast forward to the moments of founding, Glass House. Tim and I, we were, in and out of trying to find work. He was working on, real estate and flipping houses, and we were just trying to get our grind and trying to make means for our families and paying bills and doing these things. And I was going through the struggle of, I don't want to go to the VA, and I don't want to be put on pharmaceuticals, and I don't want to be told there's something wrong with me. And Tim, he's dealing with, well, I don't want any of the pills. I'm already in the VA system, but where am I going to get more help? I need more help, and we both need more help, and we're crumbling at this point. And so we meet, and we're working on this house, and we're doing all this crazy shit, and we found termites in a garage, and we're really breaking down. And so finally, we go on a road trip. We hit a vape pen, we did a dab, we smoked a couple of bowls, and all of a sudden, like, our minds just started bouncing off of each other. And I started a conversation with, man, we need fucking help. We need help outside of the VA. We need therapy. We need healing. We need something, because something is just missing. Something's not working. Something is not fitting into place right. And bouncing off each other's skulls, we ended up clashing so many ideas that we wanted a radio show. We wanted podcasts. We wanted a website. We wanted interviews. We wanted discussions. We wanted to go out and help people. We wanted to lend people money. We wanted to give people road trips and give cannabis to people. And then we started digging and finding people like Matt Hale and other veterans and other veteran communities and other veteran advocacy communities and other communities that were getting involved with other ways of getting healing and treatment. And all of a sudden it exploded into, Tim and I were invited to go down to the Institute of Cannabis Research in Colorado by a couple of veteran buddies, Matt Cale and a couple others from Soldiers of the Vine and a few others. And it just like, we took a couple steps back and realized, like, this is what we need. This is where we need to be. This is how we need to get involved. This is how we start. And we learned things from Dr. Meshalem, the guy that discovered the THC. We met so many people and got so many things and so many ideas and so many information, and all of a sudden, fast forward to now, and we're trying to hustle into getting other veterans healing and therapy through outdoor projects like walking, hiking, and fishing. We're trying to help people clean their homes. We're trying to give people haircuts that, might need haircut, and they might need funding, but they don't have the funding, and whatever it is to help veterans take care of themselves. Because we all know, being veterans, you have that mentality instilled in you, not for a negative reason sometimes. Yeah, some of the bad things, like Tim, he's got the combat. Some of the bad things with me is I've got memories of seeing combat that I didn't want to see, and you guys experienced certain things. But we all know there's a lifestyle within the military that we could carry throughout our lives that are actually beneficial, up before the sun rises. I heard a quote, never letting the sun see you sleeping, waking up early and getting the grind right, and taking care of your body, taking care of your eating habits, taking care of your hair, taking care of your face, taking care of your feet, those sort of things. So all of a sudden, now we're at this point where we're trying to outreach to everything that we possibly can. And now we're at this moment where we're meeting you guys, we're meeting others, and I feel like this is going to be the right thing. This is all heading the right way. And from there, what's next? You know, we want to know what's next. So I love to hear from you guys now.
Well, I was just curious, like, did you and Tim meet, or did you and Tim meet before you got out of the service, and how did Glass House come about? How do people get a hold of you? Like, I'm really interested in Glass House. It sounds like an amazing program.
Okay, so we started out basically about 6 months ago. But Tim and I, we've known each other for about 4 years, and it basically didn't bloom until about 6 or 8 months ago.
Yeah, we haven't really been a full-on Facebook relationship until for like 3 weeks ago, I think. He just gave me the fingers, so there's some raw veteran love for you guys. Yeah, this is Tim, by the way. I met Nick through a social group that we used to hang out with together, and it was kind of culty and kind of weird, and we both were kind of like, I don't know what we do, and we were both socially uncomfortable there. And then we made this connection on like this veteran level, which before that I'd always rejected. I'd always been sort of against the cliche of the typical flag-waving American veteran, red, white, and blue kind of thing, because I was really desensitized or demoralized. I felt crappy because of war, just to be plain, and I really felt crappy about my country, and so I wasn't into the whole I'm a vet and stuff, guys. Like I'm a huge Lebowski fan, and you know it's not always a travesty, Walter, and Vietnam, and I love that, and I identify with that very much. But at the same time, man, like I've alienated a lot of veteran homies for a long time because of that sort of really piss poor attitude, and Nick was definitely one of them. I mean, like he was a homie, but we were never connected on that deep, intimate level like that, like veteran to veteran. And then subsequently, we now, use the same medicines and find a lot of healing in similar activities and things. And so that's where Glass House really began to blossom and grow, was the fellowship that Nick and I found through the time that we got to spend in Colorado, where it was legal. We were able to use cannabis together there and find intense fellowship there between him and I. And it was weird because him and I, we sit in a tent, fireside, medicine in our system that we've never had at that level. And then all of a sudden we look at each other and like we start talking. It's like, what is this thing we're feeling? What is this, man? We should bottle this. What is this weird like connection thing? And then we started to find the same kinds of connections with other veterans. And from there, it began to be like, okay, we have to legitimize this. We've got to do something. And so I think we shopped. So how many different names do we have, Nick? 7 different names, and we asked how many different people? 12 different people, and we waited for how long? 2 weeks. That's how long we just. So we sent out teamwork messages with all the different names. That's it. That's got to be the teamwork, man. I can't remember stuff. And so we sent out the names, and I think Glass House was number 1 or 2. What was the other one, Nick? Do you remember any other ones? Cultivated View was one. I'm trying to remember the other one. All of them were intentional. Multicam was another one. Oh my God, I'm glad we didn't go with that one. Ultimately the idea was to just communicate a message of healing and natural medicine and heal thyself. And it's not necessarily about screw the VA, but it's more so about let's utilize the appropriate resources that we can while we can, when we can, and where we can, and not just swallow every pill, literally and figuratively.
Hey, it's Robbie talking now.
Taking over.
Taking over for a second. Honestly, it's having not being a military guy myself, it's really interesting and inspiring to hear you guys' stories. I was just wondering, like, how do you guys, like, as Glass House, get involved with people? Like, do you guys have a website that you operate off of? Do you guys, like, use social media and get your attention? Like, how do people contact you?
That's a great question. Thank you. So right now we're at sort of the infant stages of that. If you go to @GlassHouse22 on Facebook, that's our Facebook. It's just like it sounds, Glass and House.
the other sort of aspect of Glass House in the advocacy aspect is helping veterans get access to free and legitimately trained service dogs. We work with an organization. So am I allowed to say the name of the organization on the show? I don't want to unplug them if I can't. If I don't, you know.
Go right ahead. Plug anyone.
Go right ahead. Cool. Excellent. So Dylan's dog training here in Omaha. Russell Dillon is the trainer. He's a veteran himself, and he works with other veterans to help them get the service dogs they need to help with their symptoms related to their time in service. And I created a group, sort of an organization type aspect with my dog Boris, called BorisTheServiceDog.com, which goes to our Facebook page. You can also BorisTheServiceDog@gmail.com. And I use that to help veterans, not just with service dogs, but a variety of different other things and resources and support and community. And then last but not least, we also work with an organization based out of Divide, Colorado, called Veterans for Natural Rights. Matt Kale is an amazing guy. Him and his wife, Amy, have done some excellent work. Amy's organization does the similar stuff that we do, but for wives, and it's called the Strong Alliance. And you can Google that name. It's based out of Divide, Colorado, and they offer similar services that Nick and I are trying to be able to help our veterans. But she does it particularly focusing on wives, spouses who ultimately end up alienated in this whole process. And that's something we completely agree with. And my wife, Jennifer, is the reason I'm here and alive. And Nick's significant other, April, is another reason Nick's here and alive. And so we believe very strongly in advocating for spousal treatment. Our dogs are amazing. Nick's dog name is Sadie. She's a service dog in training, currently getting worked on. My dog is Boris. He's way cooler than me, or I think me or Nick, but definitely way cooler than me. He works for me in ways that the counselors and homies can't do. So
what kind of dogs are
I think that's it. We've got Glass House, Veterans for Natural Rights, and then Strong Alliance. So Sadie is a black lab, right, Nick? Yeah, Sadie's a black lab, and so is Boris. Boris is a mix. I think he's got a little bit of Doberman in him. But there's pictures. If you go to BorisTheServiceDog.com, there's videos. I'm kind of vain about my dog, so I take tons of pictures and videos of him, which is truly the only reason I started the Facebook page to begin with. If anybody tells you different, don't let them. I don't really care about veterans. It's just about pictures of my dog, to be honest.
What's like a day in the life of your dog consist of?
What's a day in the life of my dog, man? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, it's pretty shitty. No, I'm joking. Actually, most people think that. I'm kidding.
Let the dog
answer. He has a great life. He goes. That's right. He goes with me everywhere I go. Literally to the bathroom, to the sink, to the counter, to my bedroom, to the basement, to the car. So just really imagine what it's like to have your best friend with you, just constantly, nonstop, 24/7. And I mean, Nick's got experience what it's like to have Boris around all the time, and the way people interact, and the rudeness, and all the craziness, man.
What is the process?
Nick.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. So this is Nick again. My dog, however, the life in that dog is probably miserable right now, being that she's in training, and I, of course, have to make a living. She's kenneled while I go to work until she is graduated from being a pet to a service dog, because there is obviously a difference. So her life kind of sucks. It's peaceful and it's quiet and it's in the air conditioning, but she doesn't get a lot to move around and go about and do things like Boris. Although it's great because there's a Boris tax. I've got to feed Boris anytime I get in Tim's car. So there's that. His life is actually much greater than Sadie's right now.
Hold on. Let's make it very clear. You don't have to feed him every time you get in the car. If you get in the car and consume food in the vehicle, there's a tax. You got to give Boris a bite. It's just a thing that has to happen, man. Within reason, of course. I mean, I follow my own rules. So.
He's got to make sure it's not poison for you.
That's right. He's my canary in the cave, man.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the process like for training a service dog to fulfill the needs that you guys need for you and your clients?
Well, the training is super intense and actually really, really simple. Basically, the idea that your dog
needs to be convinced to do stuff is sort of baloney. The truth is your dog wants to do stuff and wants to do it for you and wants to help you and wants to do all kinds of stuff, but you just have to give it the appropriate amount of control and guidance and assurance that it doesn't need to be the boss. It doesn't need to walk into every situation and be the chief. It can walk in and know that you, the handler, have everything under control. And it doesn't need to growl at any dogs. It doesn't need to throw a fit. It doesn't need to look around. It doesn't even need to bark or whine. It can just sit there and know I've got it under control. And that's the idea. But what I'm telling you, what Russell Dillon does, he's like a magician. I mean, he's amazing. And he doesn't teach dogs. He teaches handlers how to teach their dogs to do what they want. Nick has got I think he's got a little bit more experience here recently with Russ.
Well, I mean, I don't have to get into that, but it's kind of rigorous. My dog at this stage in her life is somewhat young. She's still 11 months, so under a year. So right now, the training, it all depends on her attitude and behavior, and there's some behavioral issues such as dominance, and the misconception is dominance is aggression, and that's not true. Her level of dominance is wanting to be in control and wanting to be elevated to the point of wanting to have control of how she eats, when she eats, where she eats, how she walks, when she walks, where she walks, how she uses the bathroom, where she uses the bathroom, when she uses the bathroom. These are all little tics that dogs have that most people don't understand when they're just a pet, but when they're graduated to a service dog, these are duties that they have to respectively obey when they need to obey them. So with her, it is very rigorous right now because of her age and her behavior, and trying to knock that behavior out with things like an e-collar or a pinch collar. Those kinds of things are within the training. Otherwise, maintaining her attitude as far as listening and obeying and making sure that she's got those positive reinforcements, she's locked on, and the training is that much easier when she's locked on, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I find it quite amazing that you guys are implementing service dogs into all the other things you're doing. I did a little research on Glasshouse, and you're doing outdoor therapy, organic and holistic healing, also using natural remedies. Do all these really tie in together, or are they like separate events for each thing that you're doing?
No way, man. This is Tim. Truth be told, the house analogy goes so much further than the veteran, because we're actually talking about building a house of care, right? A whole house. And those houses are actually built with pillars. And those pillars are service dogs, holistic treatment, outdoor therapy, and fellowship. And that fellowship is, like, our thinking on fellowship personally is something I adopt from a book I read back in a long, long time ago in a cult I used to be in, but I was able to pull some good principles from it, and the principle was that fellowship exists. It actually doesn't need to be procured, it doesn't need to be manufactured, it doesn't need to be designed, it doesn't need to be cultivated, and anything of those things that is done to something that you try to call fellowship, when you try to cultivate it or manufacture it, it's fake. And it tastes plasticky, and it's bullcrap, and nobody likes it. And the people that do it arbitrarily and oftentimes begrudgingly. And what I found is that when you put in an environment of natural outdoor therapy, natural homeopathic treatment, natural communication between veterans, which is natural, the not the grab-ass games that we were talking about earlier, but the camaraderie, the fellowship, the one-on-one, the communication, when you team all four, and the dogs, when you team all 4 or 5 of those things together, what can and what we've seen happen is that people open up. And they open up in ways that, and I can quote a veteran here recently with 5 or 6 deployments under his belt. He said, "I've never talked about this ever." And I was like, "Well, when did you come back?" And he's like, "Oh, 06. And I'm like, "Oh, 2006, dude? You know it's 2017, right?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "You know it's good to talk about that, right?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know, man. I just never really thought it's a good thing." And it just blew my mind, right? It blew my mind that there's a veteran who I know who lives in my city who I could be talking to and bringing with me on these hikes that thinks it's better
to medicate with booze, literally, and I quote, "Listen, man, I've got a fit that just I'm good." No, you're not good, friend. You're going to harm yourself, and here's why. And they don't know any better. And so we're literally trying to be somewhere between a life preserver and a boat. You know what I mean? Like that's somewhere between there. I mean, you know. And honestly, I'll tell you the truth. As a veteran who struggles with intense PTSD, chronic anxiety, insomnia, vertigo, TBI symptoms, all kinds of garbage, man. Being with my homies who are hurt like that helps me not hurt like that. And I believe that if and when we're allowed to do it on the level we aim to do it at, I think that will become even greater for me. And I find that I prophesy, if I can put it that way, or sort of look into the future, however you want to call it, that when it gets big enough that we hope it will, I won't need a lot of the natural medicine I need anymore because the symptoms that I used to fight with aren't around anymore because the problems are healed. And I can say that that's a legitimate logic. The reason there is consistent because I know other veterans who have said the same thing, who I could quote now, who would hop online and be like, yes, that's legit, that's true. Nick wants to say a couple things unless you have some questions, I think. But what do you guys have? I'm curious.
Go ahead, Nick, and then I actually have what I was going to say was, after World War II and Vietnam, it was years after these conflicts that the biggest amount of PTSD incidents occurred. So, if we follow suit, we're still due for, a big explosion of PTSD and even more suicides. I don't know how you could get more than 40 a day, but hopefully that doesn't happen. And it sounds like cannabis is a lot better method than prescription pills.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Nick here. So, I mean, for us, it's a whole new level of trying to find healing and therapy. But for me personally, being home for, almost 5 years, I didn't want to be on medications and pharmaceuticals, and yet I've got people around me that are. And I watched Tim drop 100 pounds almost, in the 5 years that I've known him, based on just getting off of the pharmaceuticals. I know guys that are going, mad crazy, and guys that are dealing with a lot. And I've known guys that have committed suicide, and there are guys that I know that have wanted to do harmful things to themselves and others. And for me, seeing the other side of combat, seeing the support side, and seeing the outside of weapons drawn, I'm more of dropping supplies out of the sky while, things are popping off for the guys down on the ground. Seeing that side, I've got this supportive mentality stuck into my head. And if there are guys dealing with issues, but much greater, much worse than mine, then I absolutely 100% want and need to be there to keep them safe, to keep them alive, and to keep them their families healthy and alive as well. And so this whole thing for me is blooming based on the fact that there are people in a much worse condition for me than me, and they need medication. They need the right medication. They need the right mentality for that right medication, but they also need the support. They also need the lifting up. They also need the person that's going to be there to go, hey, bro, I really hate to say this, but you look a mess, and your breath stinks, your clothes stink. We need to go get a haircut. We need to go brush our teeth. We need to, go drop the bottles of alcohol. We need to go, get you a dog. Let's go get a dog. Let's get you off those pharmaceuticals, and let's get you on something that's going to benefit you, like valerian root or kratom or, those types of things, alongside the cannabis and the things of those sorts, because it's not about judgment and criticism. It's about, I've been there, I've dealt with it, I was depressed, ruined, decrepit, wanting to commit suicide and doing harmful things to myself and others. I've been the lazy, just uninhabited, absolutely I desire to do nothing kind of person, even for myself. So the greater lengths are, we are a support group, and we will support. We do support to the utmost, and that's what it's about for these guys, because there again, it's much worse, and they need much more than what they're getting right now.
So if a veteran comes to you guys and is a mess, and you say like, we could do this for you, we get you a dog, like what is the process for that? Like, do you sit down with them and talk and see exactly what they need? How does the process of getting a service dog, just general question?
Well, we would obviously contact, Dylan's Dog Training is our point of reference for sure, 100%. But he's got a person that is a dog finder, and it's either donated or you pay it out of pocket. But it's a $200 dog finder's fee, and based on if you have a preference, but if there's a certain dog that you like or a certain dog you want. Otherwise, Dylan, Russell Dillon, he might offer a dog, or he might have a dog in mind, or he might have ideas about how you go about finding the dog that you need for whatever disabilities. They've got retriever dogs that are service dogs that help retrieve medicine and medications for those that are in a wheelchair, or retrieve things for those that are in a wheelchair, those sorts of things. So we would go through the dog finder, we would go through all those things. Oftentimes there's also donations from either the American Legion, the VFW, or other veterans programs that would donate the finances. Russell Dillon offers his training program for free for veterans that are obtaining a service dog. And so there's this whole loop of camaraderie and fellowship and giving and, lifting up and helping and supporting through this program and through all of this. And initially you could either, go into Russell Dillon and go onto his website, but if you go through us, it would be, we're going to send you right there. We're going to be alongside you because we're interested, we're engaged, and we're going through it right now. And, eventually it would be amazing if, we end up having a training program of some sort ourselves, partnered or alongside. It wouldn't be a bad thing. So it would initially just be us giving support to Russell Dillon, and if a guy needs it and a guy wants it and he's desired to obtain it, then we're going to pick him up by his arms and stand side by side and walk him through the process and be there if he's got any questions.
That organization you were talking about that works with just like the spouses of people who suffer from PTSD, are you guys going to start
Strong
reaching?
Alliance.
Yeah, Strong Alliance. Are you guys going to be, partnering with them so you cover the vets until you build your house, and they cover the spouses, or do you want to implement that into your own organization?
Hey, it's Tim. The idea ultimately would be that because of how integral my wife is, and all of the spouses and wives are to each of the veterans, I think it's going to be something that's naturally just going to happen. Personally, I don't think it's going to be something that we're going to necessarily have to make an intentional side project for. Although, to be very honest, Amy and the folks, the other gals she has working with her there, they're doing big enough things that bringing a quote-unquote chapter of the Strong Alliance back to Nebraska would not be a bad idea, just given the sheer number of veterans that we have locally because of the military base that we have, and because there's Offutt Air Force Base here just a few miles from where we're at. And so there's a large number of veterans that have retired here that, by and large, only have identifiers through the organizations of their grandfathers. So, and then again, I say nothing negative about these organizations, other than to say that they've been around for a significantly long time. The VFWs, the Foreign Legions, the Eagles Clubs, those kind of things. They're great, and they're awesome, and they're wonderful. But at the same time, they're lacking, and I say they're lacking for a reason, because we still have something like 40 veterans a day plus killing themselves through intentional suicide or overdose or drug interactions, or all sorts of different reasons. But ultimately what's happening is these veterans are killing themselves or ending their lives, and there's nothing to show for it. It's not like, for instance, if it's unfortunately someone is murdered, there's someone to blame for that, someone to hold accountable. But we don't have someone to hold accountable when a veteran kills himself. Other than the veteran, which becomes really, a very, very weird slippery slope to become mad at the veteran for killing himself. But that's a fact. It's actually something the counselors talk about, is that you have to deal with the anger involved with the veteran who's harmed himself, who's now not here. You have to deal with that, and that's a real thing. And so those are the kinds of things that, honestly, my wife would do much better at handling. Talking with a spouse who's lost a veteran to suicide was something that I might be able to help with, but to be honest, my wife is going to do a significantly better job. And so, to get right to answer the question, I apologize. I've kind of taken a long way around here, but to answer the question directly, yes, we would like to have something in relationship to Strong Alliance, or actually Strong Alliance itself here in Omaha, as another one of those building blocks of the glass house, definitely.
Guys, what an amazing story. I can't even begin to imagine what the experience was like. Could you guys talk a little bit more about your podcast and what you guys are trying to get done with that? We're just starting up our other one, and we're trying to figure out more guests. So what are you guys getting into with that podcast?
Well, so far right now, our idea is to have, interviews and discussions, and we really want to go outside of the mainstream, the mainframe of media, the boxed-in podcast, social media kind of almost entrepreneur-esque style kind of, I don't want a green screen behind the podcast talk about veterinary things and how we go about our medicinal, practices. It would be a much more engaged and intuitive thing. So to build on top of your suggestion, I think our main goal is to try and reach to getting to podcast level, getting to a radio show level as fast and as much as possible, because I think we're ready. It's just we're lacking in some of the, the equipment or the studio or some of those ways that we can obviously try and get ourselves and perpetuate that, but there are much more, bigger projects that we're kind of working on. So it's a slower progress towards that.
So we're starting up.
Also, I wanted to add.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
If I could, real quick. Yeah. So the thing with it, what Nick was talking about is getting away from the confines of a radio show and getting into the live action, because we've got 4 GoPros here, 5 I think, and a couple handhelds and our cell phones, and we would love to take a crew of dudes and strapped with GoPros and service dogs, and then walk up to a complete stranger with a service dog and a veteran, with everybody wearing cameras, and say, hey, listen, I wanted to ask you some questions about this guy and his dog real quick. And then just quiz the average person about what they know about service dogs, and then use that as an educational opportunity and say, hey, listen, actually, these dogs are looked at like wheelchairs. Actually, you should act like they're not even in the room when they're working. Actually, when they're wearing a vest, it's no different when they're not, because the law doesn't require them to wear a vest, but vests help communicate messages. These are kinds of things that people don't know. You shouldn't even actually acknowledge the dog. If you're in a room with a service dog, don't even act like it's there, which is a very difficult thing, especially with Boris or Sadie, because they're like really super cute. But at the same time, if that dog is trained to do a particular task and that person walks up and says, hey, Gucci Goo to the puppy, they may, at that point, distract that dog from doing what it's supposed to do at that point or even later. It may cause residual issues. And so just things to think about that most people don't know, and therefore when they make the offense, it may still cause the harm, but they're unawares. So our goal, that's the main goal with Boris the Service Dog, is to communicate, and educate.
Well, just to go with that, first of all, we're starting another one called Vaporize the Pain, that it's not just going to be about PTSD and stuff like that. It's going to be every illness. And we also have a YouTube channel. So if you guys, are having trouble doing that, getting that started, if you wanted to try it out, we could throw it on the YouTube channel and see if there's any interest involved in that.
That's brilliant, man. Yeah, I love the name. I love the concept. I love the idea. Both Nick and I are big fans of vaporizing, when the times that we have had in Colorado when completely legal, we prefer vaporizing over anything else. While we recognize flower, the peak medicine we've ever achieved while we've been in Colorado has been FECO, full extract cannabis oil, and above and beyond that, it's been vaporized medicine. I think Nick was going to say something about one of the millions of words I just said. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree 100% with all of that. But not only, I mean, when you talked about, you know, not only PTSD and those sorts of things, I would 100% agree with that, because there are much more deeper levels of disabilities that I've filed in my claim, being that I've just gone through the VA, like fibromyalgia, and I've learned that, you know, the topicals in certain ways, but also the vaporizing, it helps tremendously with the fibromyalgia, which is always having nerve and muscle and bone pain and aches, and on top of that, having, you know, blown shoulders and knees and a back problem, and, you know, sleep is another big thing. So vaporizing is key to getting successful sleep, as I've learned in recent times. So that would be an amazing thing to get into.
Oh, we'd love to have you guys on. We're you know, something really interesting that was posted a couple days ago is the NFL is wanting to work with their players union to study the benefits of medical cannabis, and you know, it's a big organization like the NFL taking a stand saying, hey, you know, there might be something here, especially in America. That might just be the push that gets the ball rolling even faster.
Yeah, well, what's funny is it's kind of ridiculous that the NFL would have that permissibility, that ability to have that, and not the veteran community quite yet. I recognize that the VA commissioner might have said that in the legal states they might be consulting veterans for medicinal cannabis use, but if they're not doing that full spectrum, it should be. You know, it should be. If they're going to the NFL and doing it, then why isn't it full spectrum for veterans? You know, that kind of it kind of just mitigates and kind of litigates a lot of things for the veteran community that I'm a little concerned by, and want to raise a lot of questions and talk to those people even, because that's obviously they suffer from TBIs and having all kinds of issues. There's all kinds of health issues that can come parallel to the NFL, but being in combat and being, you know, the patriotic serving community that, you know, some of us are, I think the veterans should get that incentive before the NFL, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is Tim. Yeah, I would say that it's actually kind of a slap in the face. It's like, listen, the veteran advocate, patient, aware doctors that I know at the VA, all of them have told me unanimously, cannabis helps with PTSD. Cannabis helps with everything. Patients that have cannabis in states where it's legal aren't on pharmaceuticals, or are on such a minuscule dosage that the statistics are almost minuscule, almost like inconsequential. There's such little data that they almost can't even procure the data from states where cannabis is illegal in regards to veterans and PTSD, or, you know, their symptoms related to PTSD, so anxiety, stress, those sorts of things. And I want to also be clear, there's also a huge problem, speaking about the Strong Alliance. While the Strong Alliance particularly pertains to spouses, there are female veterans who have PTSD. And also one of the big sort of ideas that I've seen among my veteran male friends is that, well, yeah, I mean, maybe if she was raped. And I'm like, well, that's atrocious, dude. Like, I was a grunt, and I didn't serve with any females until I got to a warrior transition unit, and it was not a wonderful time for me personally, so I didn't do well with a female command personally, because I was a grunt and because I wasn't, you know, medicated, and I wasn't, you know, well-adjusted and all these things. But there are females who I know who have deployed and seen things that I haven't seen that are more hardcore and fuller than I was, who get completely desensitized, or not desensitized, but devalued or disregarded or pushed aside. It's incredibly messed up because they have real problems and they're expected to be superstars and come back home and be perfectly fine and be mom. But the fact is they can't just be mom any more than me and Nick can just be husband or dad. And I mean, I guess Nick would have to have a kid first, but and the fact is that those female veterans need as much hua camaraderie as we do, because the likelihood of them going out in the suck and getting hurt, or going and doing something out there with these kinds of homies like us, then they're probably going to find a lot of therapy in going out with a bunch of loud, bombastic grunts. They're going to find a lot of therapy in that, because for them it's going to be therapy. It's going to be remembering deployment, but in a safe zone. And then their husbands are going to be like, oh crap, this is like awesome. My wife's coming back again. And they're going to be like, oh, let's see what we can do. And oftentimes the spouses of deployed veterans have secondary PTSD that's completely unaddressed. I can guarantee you as a fact that my wife is a different woman as a result of dealing with the garbage that I put her through during my time in the service. All the crap that I did to her, I lied and cheated on her and did all kinds of garbage. Man, I was a horrible, horrible human being. But she's the one that stuck through it. She said, I sent her divorce papers while I'm downrange and said, I don't want to be with you because I wanted to die, and I was ready to die. And like, divorce, is the only option. Like, stay away from me because I actually care about you, and if you stick around, then I'm gonna let you be hurt. So get away from me, stay away from me. That was garbage. I treated her like crap, and she would say every time, that's my husband. So divorce papers or not, that's my husband, and I'm gonna stick around until then, because that's not the same husband I married. Something's wrong. That's my husband, and it just stuck, and it's been 14 years of that. And I'm blessed, and I think that other people need to experience that kind of love and appreciation, and the only way they can get that is through these kind of fellowships, I believe, personally.
Well, I'm really glad you're doing a lot better than you were before, and I it's really hard to follow that up. That's a very emotional and inspiring story, and yeah, I'm just glad that you're doing a lot better. Question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah. What's some questions you got? Man, I'm a jabberbox dude. So.
No, it's good. I have a question, and before I ask it, I just want to say that I'm not a doctor. I haven't studied in medicine, but CTE, and just because we were talking about the NFL, like CTE is the brain trauma that NFL players go through, and sometimes they have episodes where they're very similar to PTSD symptoms. I'm just curious if you guys have had any experience that knowing that people who are deployed with all the bombs going on around and being thrown around when they're hit by an IED, them getting brain trauma, and maybe not always it's PTSD, it might be a little CTE as well.
Absolutely. I can tell you personally, I was diagnosed with TBI, it's called like mild TBI, because I wasn't in close proximity, but I was less than 50 feet, and I was inside of a vehicle. So it still rocked me to the core, messed up my knee, and did all kinds of stuff. But there are guys that I know who aren't jerks. They're not mean, and really, probably, truthfully, don't have PTSD. But their TBI turns them into manic, depressive, bipolar, schizophrenic lunatics. And I don't say those phrases loosely or lightly. I mean every single one of them. It makes them into insane, crazy people who literally are so fed up with the way they feel, that's the only option is to pop pills. And so then we come along and say, hey man, stop taking those pills and try some natural medicine. And all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, this is feeling again. That's what Nick can attest to that. Like, that's what these guys are saying. It's like, I feel like I can feel for the first time.
What is I'm not too sure what TBI stands for.
TBI is traumatic brain injury, and is basically where the noggin gets sloshed around inside the cranium too hard, and like if somebody experiences a concussion, there's a high likelihood they could have a traumatic brain injury, mild or severe. The severe are the ones that need, like I have really, really bad vertigo. Sometimes my hands shake. I have intense migraines that are debilitating, that could be harmful. Brain swelling, tension, migraines, headaches. What else? I have this weird thing with my ears, and there's there's a problem with the ear canal too in relationship to the damage and stuff. And I only have a mild one, and so there's guys that I know who ran over numerous IEDs that were in my platoon who came home just fine, literally just fine, no TBIs, nothing. And so there's a lot of guilt there, you know. I mean, like guys like me. I mean, I saw some suck. I did, but I feel really bad for guys, my homies like Nick, who never pulled a trigger downrange, but still fight with all these things. And now on top of that, he has to fight with the stigma of, oh, you didn't even go to deploy, or you're just a pogue, or you weren't even in the war. And that kind of garbage is what we're trying to fight against, because the way we say it is that if you've got a DD-214, you're a homie, period. It doesn't matter. And even if you don't, if you served in the military, if you were willing to put your life on the line, you're a homie. It doesn't matter. Female, male, up, down, left, right, well, not, it doesn't matter. That's another thing. April, Nick's significant other just mentioned. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation either. If you're gay, lesbian, transgender, if you think you're a dog or a wolf or a tree or a cage, it really doesn't matter to us. If you were willing to put your shut up, they're laughing at me. If you were willing to put your life on the line for this thing here that you believe is really badass, then stand up next to me, go on walks, and I want to know about your life. I want to be a bug on your shoulder all the time, because you're susceptible to killing yourself, and I don't want you to die, because I believe humans have intrinsic rights and values, and that value isn't based upon any of those other things. It's based upon their humanity, you know, the intrinsic value kind of idea.
It's really awesome, guys. Do you guys have any upcoming dates or anything, touring for your organization, or anything along those lines where people can come see you, come talk to you, get a feel for what you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've been doing with this whole outdoor healing therapy kind of thing is every weekend, Saturday morning specifically, we've been going on hikes in various locations. Some of our favorites we've been repetitively going to. But yeah, every Saturday morning we post an event during the week before. So for instance, this coming Saturday we posted an event today, and posted it out publicly and shared it a bunch of times and asked a bunch of people to share it a bunch of times. So most of the time we have information all in the about section of the event. So we've got time, date, location, who, what, where, when, why, how. So that's a weekly ongoing thing, as much as we like, as much as we want, as much as we can get working on it. For the other seasons, we really haven't come to plans, but that's what we're hoping with the radio show, the live podcast, and everything like that.
Also, I wanted to add to what he was saying, that if there are people, we're in Omaha, Nebraska right now. If you're listening to this, if you're hearing this, and you've got property that's more than 2 acres that's not in the city or it's adjacent to the city, and you want to let us come and hike it or experience it or get to know you guys, please, because that's where we want to put these veterans, is out in the middle of nowhere, next to people that are cool, where it's relaxed, where we know the environment is safe, where we can go out in nature. We have a contact that does equine therapy, that has horses, and so that's what we're really, really looking for. And obviously the benefit is that it's free, because both Nick and I are on incredibly limited income. I'm 100% disabled I'm 80% disabled through the VA, but I can't work, and so we get all of our money through my disability, and so I'm on in essence a fixed income, and you know, Nick is doing what he can to work his 9 to 5 and pay his bills and take care of stuff, and so we don't really have a lot of financial resources, but what we do have, we give, which is our time, and our phones and our Facebooks and our attention, as much of our attention as we can give to it. Maybe too much, I don't know. April and my wife might be able to say if we give too much, I guess. But awesome. There's a balance, you know, and we're trying to walk it. But if you go to if you're on Facebook, it's at Glasshouse22, which obviously the 22 is akin to the 22 a day, which obviously we disagree with and think it's somewhere in the upwards of 40s to 50s probably, if it's more realistic, just based upon the numbers of veterans who've deployed to those countries, you know.
We'll make sure we get on the social medias and retweet that for you guys and put it out on our Facebook as well.
You know,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Tim and Nick, like the amazing story. I'd love to work with you guys on any avenue we can, and any avenue you're willing to. We're making Robbie and I, we've reached out to, I think we're at 35 different veteran organizations across North America and the globe. We're putting together a little documentary of So we're gathering footage from each organization, and everyone will have their spot in the documentary. So that love to have you guys in there. Love to have you back on the podcast, and promote you guys in any way we can, because you guys are absolute heroes.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Absolutely. Yes, we would be totally down for that, man.
Totally. It was an absolute pleasure, guys.
Well, we'll get out of here for the night, and we'll keep in contact. Tim and Nick are definitely going to be back on, and you'll be seeing a lot more of them around Vapes4Vets and Vaporize the Pain.
Nice to meet you guys.
So,
thanks for coming.
Yeah, one last question really fast is where are you guys located at, and what do you guys do in your community and in your surrounding areas? What kind of region are you guys in? What state?
Go ahead, Jess.
We don't know who's gonna go first. I'm up here in Canada. I'm in up in Manitoba. I'm a prison guard and Army reservist. The company that we work with on this, just they have a reach around the globe, and we know that PTSD is a global problem, not just here in North America. And I've had a little bit of experience with PTSD myself, and can't talk about it too much over the air, but it's really given me a drive to spread awareness and raise funds wherever I can for veterans organizations.
That's wonderful, man. This is Tim. So you're in Canada, and then the other guy is Robbie. Is he in the States, or where is he?
I'm in the States part-time. I just finished college here, and I'm on a part-time visa in the States. I'm heading home within about a month. I live in Ontario.
That's cool. The reason I ask about you guys living out there is because I used to live in upstate New York.
That's where I went to school.
Up by Oh, did you really? I was stationed in Watertown. That's pretty cool. That's why I was asking where you guys were located, if you were in a state where medicinal is legal or not.
Well, Canada.
Fort Drum, sir?
Oh. Go ahead, Rob.
Were you at Fort Drum?
Yes, I was. I was at Fort Drum. I was 1st Brigade Combat Team there. We the second most deployed battalion in the entire Army.
I went to school in Canton, New York.
Did you really, dude? That's cool. I used to fish Dexter's Marsh all the time. Freaking A, man. I love that area. That's where my wife want to build. I want to get about 20 acres out there and then fill it with veterans and homies and medicinal cannabis and tell the world to come to us, man. And then we pick and choose the folks that come and visit.
And not a bad little area for it. If you're with the cold.
That's right.
Well,
I try to stay cold free if I can.
Yeah. The company that
cool.
That sponsors this podcast is called Namaste Technologies, and they operate in over 26 countries. So your word and your message is going to be heard all around the world, and very happy to be able to share your story.
That's awesome. And like only 6 months into this, man. Like Tim and I, we're dreaming still of this right now, and it's happening right now as we speak. And so we couldn't ask for better people. We couldn't ask for a better opportunity. But we're more than grateful, man. We appreciate this, and we would love this in the future.
And we literally stand on the shoulders, arms, and legs of the advocates and veterans who have done things before us. And like, we don't want to by any means come in and say we're ruling roost, or we're the this or that and the other. We're just simply saying, hey, look, whatever's happening within the cannabis community, whatever is going on, veterans in Nebraska are killing themselves because of prescriptions. And so, however all that's going to work, it's what do you say, Nick? Oh yeah, and the VA has a reputation here in Omaha as being terribly reprehensible. Well, that's a whole other podcast. We could talk about the VA, which I'd love to do, by the way. I'm serious, because I have a veteran friend who would, off the books, come on air, and he works for the VA. He would not mention his name and be able to offer perhaps some different perspectives from a lot of the veterans who kind of are, ready to pee on the VA.
Well, let's set that up. I'd love to hear. This isn't just about hearing about the positives. In every podcast I always ask, like, what are the negative side effects of cannabis? What are you know, stuff like that. So it'd be really good to hear from a different perspective.
Definitely, man. Hey, I'm gonna jump off the phone here. We're gonna probably wrap up here for the evening. I really love you guys. I love your passion. I really appreciate you sticking to it on nagging us on the telephone. I apologize for blowing you off, man. It wasn't intentional. I got 6 kids, and you know, and basically getting wrapped up with them pretty much takes up most of my time and emotions and thoughts. And
No, life happens,
Nick
man.
is equally
It's
as
all
busy
good.
with all the stuff he's got going. Yeah,
It was a pleasure, man.
but you guys are great, man.
Yeah, it was great meeting you guys.
Yeah,
And
had an amazing time.
we'll have you back on soon.
Take care,
All right,
guys.
thanks, guys. You guys have a great night, man. Have a great week, and we'll be in touch.
Awesome.
Will do.
Talk soon.
All right, take it easy, guys. Bye.